Welcome everyone to this week's installment of The Verdict. This is Matt Watkins coming to you on Rock M Plus platforms. This series is your one-stop shop for breaking down Mizzou hoops with film and data. And in today's episode, we're going to be discussing a team in a bit of a crisis. The Mizzou Tigers hoops team rolled through 7 cupcake games with little sweat. They handled a bottom-level Big Ten team in Minnesota on the back of a 10-minute scoring spree. They did some experimenting through these games with lineup combinations, most notably one featuring 3 big men. When we talk about a jumbo lineup, we're talking about the starting lineup we've seen a lot with Mark Mitchell, Javon Porter, and Sean Phillips. The results in the cupcake games and the Minnesota game were fine, but it did raise some questions. And this week, Mizzou was tested. Their theories and their strategies were put to the test in games against Notre Dame and Kansas. Up in South Bend, Mizzou squandered a 12-point lead. And just a few days later, I guess that was 4 days later, they were basically run off the court in Kansas City by their rivals to the west in Kansas. Things aren't good right now. I'm not going to lie to you. The alarm bells should be sounding in the offices of Mizzou Arena. Is this the team that we're going to see the remainder of the year? We don't know that yet, but sadly, the answer may well be yes if a deep introspection is not done with what this team needs to be and what this team can be. The good news is the solution may well be at hand. There are options that haven't really been explored at length. There's some that have. But I think there's a little more gas in the tank, so to speak, with this team than what we've seen. And you have to hope so, because this start, their introduction to major conference basketball, once they got past the low majors of the world, it has not been good. Anyone who's watched the games doesn't really need a recounting of how bad things have been, especially on the offensive end in the half court. But we're going to go through it. We're going to lay the foundation as to what the problems are. And it really starts coming out of the gates. When we look at those 3 games, Minnesota, Notre Dame, Kansas, the games against high major competition, in the first 5 to 7 minutes of each half, I went back and looked at each of these. In those 3 games, Mizzou was outscored by 21 points in that span in all 3 of those games combined. To start the second half, they were outscored by 30 points to start the second half. That's a minus 51 point differential coming out of breaks, either at the beginning of the game or at halftime. That's hard to overcome. They managed to do it against Minnesota. They did not manage to do it against the other 2. That's a problem. Why is this a problem? Well, part of it is their half-court offense has simply been ineffective. When we look at the last 2 games, Mizzou has about a 78 to 79% of their offense is coming from the half court. When you look at all those games combined, that's about a .863 points per possession. And if you were to look at that over the course of a season compared to last year, that would rank around 300th nationally. Their half court offense has been stagnant, it's been ineffective, and it's cost them games. When we look back at the games individually, Mizzou scored 0.641 points per possession against Kansas. When I look back over the last 2 years, going back this season and the last season, that was the lowest points per possession Mizzou has ever scored in a half. It was actually tied with one other. That was Memphis to start last year. Tied for the lowest. Notre Dame, on the other hand, 0.736 points per possession. That was the 6th lowest. So when we look at half-court possessions, half-court offense, the last week has seen 2 of the 6 worst performances over a 44-game sample. That's bad. There's not much else you can say about it. It's been a real rough go, and the Tigers have got to figure out a way to overcome that and change things and make it more effective. And part of that, I think, is their pick-and-roll offense. When we look at ball screens, Mizzou was good at that last year. They didn't use it a whole lot. About 14% of their possessions came out of ball screens with the ball handler trying to score. They had a 0.952 points per possession, which was 97th percentile nationally. That's really good. This year, the percentage they're using that is about half at 6.8%, and their points per possession is a very meager .684. That's about 18th percentile nationally. You went from the penthouse to the outhouse real quick. And that's pretty frustrating when you think about it, because coming into the season, I thought that was going to be a major focal point in their offense, and I think it should be. Both Sebastian Mack and Anthony Robinson were top 10 pick and roll scorers last year. They're efficient at doing this, but they're not really getting their chance, and when they are, it's not working. Why? Well, some may say shooting is the problem, and I think there's some truth to that. It's not altogether wrong. But we do have a bit of a sample last year when Mizzou was down Caleb Grill late in the non-conference season, schedule of the season. As you all may remember, he was injured against Lindenwood, and he was out for about a 5-game stretch there in the non-conference play. And when we go back and look at how Mizzou performed when they lost a key shooter, they were still good. They had a 123.6 offensive rating. This year in those 3 games, 114.4. That's a 10-point drop. What about their effective field goal rate? We see about a 6% drop between that sample last year and the 3-game sample this year. More notably to me is their free throw rate has plummeted. Mizzou, with Caleb Grill out, was getting to the line over 50% of the time. And what I mean by that is free throw rate is free throws compared with field goals. So 50% free throw rate is you're taking half as many free throws as you are field goals. That's a large amount. This year, that's down to 36%. They're not getting to the rim, they're not finishing, and they're not getting fouled. And oddly, despite losing Caleb Grill, Mizzou went all in on just bypassing the 3-point shot. About 1/3, give or take, of their shots were coming from 3-point range. This year, after Jaden Stone got hurt and they don't really have that outside scoring punch, about 45% of their shots are coming from deep. So as you can see, there's a big difference between how they were attacking last year without Caleb Grill and how they're attacking this year without Jaden Stone. So what is the problem? And I think the biggest thing is Mizzou's playing the wrong guys together. I know some people may not like hearing that, but that's my earnest belief. When you look at how you have a Sebastian Mack and an Anthony Robinson, you've got 2 very proficient pick and roll scorers. You've got a team built to score off the bounce from the perimeter. Mizzou has played a lot of big combinations in their lineup, so they are getting rim attempts. They're just less quality. When you look at Mark Mitchell, he's better attacking with the head of steam. Anthony Robinson, very good off the bounce. Sebastian Mack, bull in a china shop, likes to get to the rim. But when you've got a jumble of bodies inside the paint, that makes things real hard to do. And yes, having multiple outside shooters who can knock down shots will help that. But I think it's also a matter of who's playing and who's on the court. And I think the worst part about this is that that's the focus of the team, and that's what this team does well. But it's been a conscious decision to play these lineups that don't accentuate those strengths. So with that being said, I want to share a few graphics with you here, and we're going to talk about the front court mainly. The back court has not been performing that well, but I think that's more of a downstream effect of what's going on in the front court. So for our first graphic here, we're going to look at something that Matt Harris put together for us. Thanks, Matt. And these are the plus-minus numbers from Mizzou's front court. And when we look at this, you see a few things here that are pretty surprising. Mark Mitchell at the very top, when he's playing the hybrid, we call the hybrid basically the 4 positions. So when you think of they've got a postman next to him and then more of a wing below him, whether that's Jacob Cruz, Honor Boateng, whoever. Mark Mitchell has been very good in this sample set of games. He's a plus 22 in that time. But then you look down to line number 5 there, Mark Mitchell, when he's on the wing. That means he's playing with Javon Porter, Mark, and Sean Phillips on the court at the same time. He's minus 27. What does that tell you? Mark Mitchell is a guy who can get to the rim. That's his game. When he has 2 other big men on the floor who aren't providing floor spacing, he is very ineffective. He's not going to be able to help out with the outside shot. But when you only have one guy, especially a guy like Luke Luke Northweather there sitting on row 3, who's a plus 27, who's able to stretch the floor a little bit and at very minimum space out and clear out the paint just a little bit. Mark Mitchell's excelled. Then we talk about Sean Phillips. He only plays one position when he's on the court. He's a minus 25. Yes, Sean Phillips has really struggled, and I think the team's really struggled with him on the floor. But a big part of that, again, has been with that combination of Javon Porter, Mark Mitchell, and Sean Phillips on the floor together. And you can see that. These big numbers over here. The minus 27 Phillips, the minus 16 Porter, the minus 27 Mitchell. Those are almost all derived from the jumbo lineups that we're seeing start games and start the first half, start the second half, and where the team really starts to slide. So I wanted to give you that information just so we have some context of what we're talking about when we get into the film. Mizzou is a team that needs space, whether that's creating it by drawing players out with outside shooters, and they do have a few players who've proven pretty effective at that. But I think more of it is just being able to not have so many bodies that are so focused on the paint that it really makes everything hard for everyone else. So with that being said, why don't we take a look at some of the film, and we're going to break down what I've been seeing, and these are all clips from the last 2 games. We're going to look at some of the film where Mizzou's going with a jumbo lineup or with lineups with bigger players. And then we're going to look at, more towards the end, we're going to look at some film where they have a better balanced team, whether that's with a Luke Northweather at the post or with Jacob Cruz on the floor, where they can spread things out a little bit more and have more room to operate. So we're going to start off from the very beginning at the Kansas game, very first possession. And I'm going to start and stop things here quite a bit. This very first possession, I think, is going to be a design play for Sean Phillips. Back it up just a little bit. They're going to do a little eye candy here, but I think what they're going to try and do is get him on a roll. Stop right here. I believe the play is for him to roll to the basket. It's not a very enthusiastic movement. He does have a step, as you're going to see these 2 Kansas players here get tangled up a little bit. But I believe the play is for the pass to go there. It doesn't end up happening. And when that doesn't happen, watch Sean. He's going to be in the restricted arc area the entire time. For a team wanting to get to the rim, there's just not going to be a lot of space to get there. That leads to a shot, a 3-point jump shot. And I think that's kind of an underlying result of a lot of this congestion, is that they're forced to take more shots that they normally don't want to take. We're going to see a screen and roll here that there is no screen. And last year, you may recall, a lot of these ball screens would see a similar play to this where Anthony Robinson would pivot or snake this screen, and the big man would seal. But as you see, we've got more non-shooters on the floor. We've got a low man here that's ready for all this, and you're not going to get a seal or even an attempt to one. You're just going to pass around a little bit. Sean's going to try and post up, again, anchored to this paint. Mark Mitchell's going to drive in. Help side defense is there. There's nothing available. That did lead to a run-out dunk. Okay, they're going to try and get a design punch play. Immediately, you're going to see Sean Phillips' man come and double this, which again is a consequence of not being able to step out. Mark's not going to have a whole lot of room to operate on this. Immediate double. Does a good job of realizing it. That's not really a bad shot. You don't mind Javon taking that. But again, this is why they're taking so many threes when this lineup is on the floor. Fast forward to the second half. This is Mizzou's first possession coming out of the break. Back it up just a tad. Once this initial screen isn't set over here, Sean's going to again go down to the paint. Mark Mitchell's going to drive. Again, there's nothing here. Even if he wanted to get to the paint, Sean Phillips had flexed out. Sean's man is still going to be here. It's going to get blocked. did get the foul, but again, not real clean offense. I believe this is the third possession of the second half. Got a similar lineup in. They look for the high-low, not there. Mark Mitchell, very good at attacking from the elbows. That's one of the things he does well. This is a lot more effective offense when you don't have a postman camped out here. And I know they're looking for the high-low there. They didn't get it. They haven't gotten it much against high major teams. But your bailout in these situations is going to have to be vacating this spot or having a player on this floor who can be out here. Because this is the result. All right, we're over to the Notre Dame game. We're going to see some similar problems crop up in this. Again, start the game with this jumbo lineup that has pretty negative numbers, as we've discussed before. Looking again for the high-low. Forced to take a late jump shot in the clock with about 5 seconds left because nothing was there. Again, screen not really set. They're trying to do a short roll. To Sean's credit here, he does realize the double team's coming and spray it out. And I want you to watch Sebastian Mack. He is elite at attacking off the wings, but he's going to get the basket here. But I just want to illustrate the point of having a big man camped out in the restricted arc. He's going to have to not only beat his player, but Sean's player as well. All right, and typically, like we talked about in the preseason, these are the possessions you really want Sebastian Mack to get driving downhill. He, again, is elite at ball screens out of the slot, meaning if Mark Mitchell were to set a screen here, he comes this way into the paint looking to attack. But there's not going to be a screen set. He's going to take an early jump shot. Why? Because there's absolutely no possibility for him to attack the paint in this situation. Why? Look at the logo. Again, you got Mizzou's big man there. You've got a defender there. There's absolutely no room for him to attack. Yes, probably shouldn't take that shot. Work for a better one, but still. These quick hitters that a lot of these players are good at, they're simply not there. And I just want to illustrate one other thing here. They're going to set a UCLA screen here, which is just a back screen. And I don't really know why the purpose is. Sean's going to come up and screen Anthony Robinson's man, but, I mean, there's nothing there. His man's just playing center field. Sean's man comes over and doubles. He does do a good job reversing it out. But, I mean, look at this. You've got 5 guys loaded to the ball. 1 guy a little bit weak side, but there's no chance you're going to score off that as a primary option. That leads to a Mark Mitchell jump shot with 2 seconds left. Again, not the shot you're wanting to take. All right. Here in the second half, I want to talk about this one a little bit. This is a design play for Honor Boateng coming out of the half. They're going to try and get him isolated down low with what they believe is a mismatch, and I think they got it. But again, Sean Phillips, his man, is able to play center field here, and what's worse is once Boateng gets the catch and Sean's man comes over, Sean does nothing except drift down right into the play. He's not forcing his man to make a decision as to who he's going to guard. All right, here we go again. They're going to do an empty side ball screen over there, but when you look at who's in the paint and who the defender is, there's going to be no opportunity for a short roll. A short roll here would put them in an advantageous situation because they're going to trap the ball screen. Honor Boateng's man's going to come over and take Javon Porter, and it should be a 3-on-2. However, it doesn't work out that way. Javon has no opportunity to drive. Honor Boateng's man stunts down because he's not going to be a threat right there. Two men in the paint, cutting off any drive. No opportunity to make a rim attack. A little bit different personnel out there on the floor. No longer a jumbo lineup. Still some of the same problems. Mark Mitchell does do a good job of getting to the line, but again, tough sledding. So now that we've talked about that, I want to get away from that and look at some of the lineups and some of the sequences that have been working in Mizzou's favor. Against Kansas, that wasn't a whole lot, but there were stretches where Mizzou did good things on offense in the half court. We're seeing a little bit more of a spread floor here. Yes, the guys are loaded up, but we have guys spaced at least on offense. Still loaded up, but you've got Jacob Cruz down there who's going to vacate, which is smart. And this is Cruz's fault, but I do give Cruz credit for making this cut. He went reverse. I think he should have just went up on the front side instead of into the help side defense, but this is the only cut Mizzou was able to get all day. And that's because they didn't have someone there in the middle soaking up defensive pressure and protecting the rim. This is good ball movement. Mizzou gets doubled, Mark Mitchell, which is going to happen, and you accept that. You're playing 4-on-3. The rest of the court does a great job dribbling out. That's a good shot you want to get. Cruz didn't knock it down, but you've got a 40+% three-point shooter out there. That's what you want from offense. All right, look, floor is a lot more spread. Mark Mitchell's somewhat occupying the block, but he's going to move. Lifts up, penetrate, kick, finds a seam. That's not there when you have an anchor in the paint. Empty side ball screen. This is a good two-man game. All right, Sebastian Mack. So we haven't talked about him a whole lot in this Kansas game. He didn't play until halfway through the second half. I believe this was one of his first possessions on the court. But we talk about just being able to space. Yes, Luke Northweather is not a big offensive threat, but you've got Bryson Tiller up here who has to account for him. You can't just leave him wide open. He just hit a three. And then you see the paint down here. It's going to be vacant. Sebastian Mack is a good player one-on-one. Look at the floor. You've got Cruz clearing out. His man's following him. Tiller's a little bit late here because of that mark, and he's able to get down for his shot. That's one of Mack's shots that he likes to take, and he's pretty good at taking. Those are the types of looks you're wanting to get out of offense. Okay. Perhaps the best example of anything here. We've got a spread floor, corner, some eye candy up top. Mitchell's going to set a screen. Anthony Robinson's going to hit him on the short roll when they try and get the ball out of his hands. Look at this. He's got one man in the paint. That's doable. That is doable for Mark Mitchell. Really good job here by T.O. Barrett. This is more transition offense, but the principle's the same. He's going to attack the heart of the paint, and he's going to suck defenders to him and spray it out. Best shooter, wide open. Skip across, again, your best shooter. When you've got guys who can pass and who can shoot on the floor, that helps. But again, the spacing is what's primary here. Being able to get guys into positions where they succeed and where they can get to succeed. Okay, got a little bit of a loaded up paint here, but that's all right. Still, one-on-one, didn't get the shot. But again, you're going to take your chances with Mark Mitchell one-on-one against basically anyone. Floor is spread. Mitchell vacates. This is a shot Anthony Robinson needs to hit. Didn't hit it, but that's a good quality shot out of this offense. No rim protection to come over and help because Mark Mitchell does a good job. Let me go back there before we conclude this film session. I do want to point out something that Mitchell does well here. Okay, so he's not getting the ball here. But what he does do is he's able to give just enough interference on his man there so T.O. Barrett's able to get off that shot. Just being able to position himself there. Yes, he's in the paint, but he's sealing his man so Barrett can get that shot off. So that's what I've got for you from film tonight. I know it's not the best news or the film you wanted to watch or what you wanted to talk about, but I think this is important. Mizzou has options offensively. They're a team that is going to drive, they're going to kick. Their perimeter players, if you include Mark Mitchell in that, which I somewhat do because he is a perimeter attacker, having those guys with space to operate, you've got to manufacture it one way or another. Yes, having 3 guys out on the floor who can shoot 45% from three-point range, that creates space. But you know what else creates space? Just having the right combinations together. I'm not saying bench Sean Phillips. I'm not saying bench Javon Porter. What you have to do, though, is you have to use those players intelligently as far as who they're on the court with. You can't have all 3 of them on the floor in the same time. We've seen that. The numbers bear that out. The film bears that out. What happens when that occurs is Mizzou has no ability to get to the rim. They have no ability to pressure the paint off the drive because it's so congested. So what they end up having to do is take shots from outside with players that aren't necessarily your best shooters. Anthony Robinson's been a little rough the last few games. You don't mind him taking those. Sebastian Mack, that's not his game. Honor Boateng, that's not really his game. Those are the combinations that those 3 big men play with. Mark Mitchell doesn't shoot well. Javon Porter is okay, but hasn't shot particularly well. Sean Phillips isn't going to shoot. So you have to consider how you best optimize your rotation, how you best optimize lineups on the floor. And you've got to be able to get those paint touches with your perimeter players. Either that or have a big man who can spray the ball on post-ups. And Mizzou really hasn't been able to do either of those things. So that's all I've got for you this week. I hope next time we talk, it's going to be a little bit more lively and much more entertaining and happy. But, this is a problem. Mizzou has got to get this sorted out. If they do not, I'm afraid their half-court offense is going to suffer. The defensive aspects of these jumbo lineups hasn't matched up to outweigh the offensive lack of performance. And when Mizzou is not able to get out and transition off of turnovers, off of misses, they're not getting anything going offensively when these players are on the floor. And I think that's got to change. I think Dennis Gates and his staff is going to realize this, hopefully sooner than later. But I don't know how much longer this is sustainable if you want to continue winning games. Mizzou's got 2 games coming up against low major opponents where they can try and readjust, or they can try and work on what they're doing and see if it gets better. But fact of the matter is, once those 2 are over, there's not an easy game left on the schedule, and things can spiral quickly. As Yogi Berra says, it gets laid out here early, and that's kind of where we're at in this point in the season. Mizzou's got 1 chance left to do anything of consequence in the non-conference portion of the season, and then it's conference play. And yes, the SEC is down, but that works both ways. You have a chance to rack up wins, but the quality of the wins aren't going to be anywhere near what they were a year ago. So if they have any designs of getting to the tournament, doing big things, it's got to change now, and I think this is step 1. So with that being said, I'm happy you all tuned in. Hopefully we'll have something more fun to discuss next time, and until then, stay in school.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to Rock M Radio, a proud partner of Fans First Sports Network. Rock M Radio is the official podcast network of Rock M Plus, a new and exciting subscription service provided by me and the other voices of Rock M Radio. Please take a few moments to head over to rockm.plus and sign up for an account today. The cost is only $5 a month, and benefits include access to our live podcast, a subscriber-only message board, weekly newsletters, and more. If you enjoyed this episode of Rock M Radio and would like to see more just like it beamed directly into your personal device, make sure to click the subscribe button below and tell your friends. Our podcast feed is available through the Apple Podcast app for iPhone, Google Podcast app for Android, whatever app you listen to your podcast. You can also find Rock M Radio on Spotify. If you're looking for a podcast about your favorite team that is not Missouri Tigers, Fan First Sports Network is your answer. A full podcast network loaded with the team-specific podcasts covering Major League Baseball, the NFL, NHL, NBA, MLS, and more. And we'll be back with more episodes of Rock M Radio coming to you soon.